I will do my reading practice from the book Effective Public Speaking by Dale Carnegie. This group met Friday evenings from 5 to 7. One Friday, a certain gentleman connected with an uptown bank. For our purposes, we shall designate him as Mr. Jackson. Found 4:30 had arrived, and what was he to talk about? He walked out of his office, bought a copy of Forbes magazine at a newsstand, and in the subway coming down to the Federal Reserve Bank where the classes met, he read an article entitled "You Have Only 10 Years to Succeed." He read it not because he was interested in the article especially, but because he must speak on something, on anything to fill his quota of time. An hour later, he stood up and attempted to talk convincingly and interestingly on the contents of his article. What was the result? The inevitable result. He had not digested, had not assimilated what he was trying to say. Trying to say that expresses it precisely. He was trying. There was no real message in him seeking for an outlet, and his whole manner and tone revealed it unmistakably. How could he expect the audience to be any more impressed than he himself was? He kept referring to the article, saying the author said so and so. There was a sure fit of Forbes magazine in it, but regrettably little of Mr. Jackson. So the writer addressed him somewhat in this fashion: Mr. Jackson, we are not interested in his shadowy personality who wrote that article. He is not here. We can't see him. But we are interested in you and your ideas. Tell us what you think personally, not what somebody else said. Put more of Mr. Jackson in this. Why not take this same subject for next week? Why not read this article again and ask yourself whether you agree with the author or not? If you do, think out his suggestions and illustrate them with observations from your own experiences. If you don't agree with him, say so and tell us why. Let this article be merely the starting point from which you launch your own speech. Mr. Jackson accepted the suggestion, reread the article, and concluded that he did not agree with the author at all. He did not sit down in the subway and trying to prepare this next speech to order. He let it grow. It was a child of his own brain, and it developed and expanded and took on stature just as his physical children had done. And like his daughters, these other children grew day and night when he was least conscious of it. One thought was suggested to him while reading some item in the newspaper. Another illustration swam into his mind unexpectedly when he was discussing the subject with a friend. The thing deepened and heightened, lengthened, thickened as he thought over it during the odd moments of the week. The next time Mr. Jackson spoke on this subject, he had something that was his or that he dug out of his own mind, currency coined in his own mint, and he spoke all the better because he was disagreeing with the author of this article. There is no spur to rouse one like a little opposition. When an incredible contrast between these two speeches by the same man in the same fortnight on the same subject, what a colossal difference the right kind of preparation makes. Let us cite another illustration of how to do it and how not to do it. A gentleman whom we shall call Mr. Flynn was a student of public speaking in Washington DC. One afternoon, he devoted his talk to eulogizing the capital city of the nation. He has hastily and superficially gleaned his facts from a booster booklet issued by a newspaper. They sounded like it dry, disconnected, undigested. He had not thought over his subject adequately. It did not elicit his enthusiasm. He did not feel what he was saying deeply enough to make it worthwhile expressing. The whole affair was flat and flavorless and unprofitable, a speech that could not fail. A fortnight later, something happened that touched Mr. Flynn to the core. A thief stole his car out of a public garage. He rushed to the police and offered rewards, but it was all in vain. The police admitted that it was well impossible for them to cope with the crime situation, yet only a week previously they had found time to walk about the street, chalk in hand, and find Mr. Flynn because he had parked his car 15 minutes over time. These chalks, who were so busy that they could not catch criminals, aroused his ire. He was indignant. He had something now to say, not something that he had gotten out of a booklet issued by the newspaper, but something that was leaping hot out of his own life and experience. Here was something that was part and parcel of the real man, sounding that had aroused his feelings and convictions. In his speech eulogizing the cities of Washington, he had laboriously pulled out sentence by sentence, but now he had but to stand on his feet and open his mouth, and his condemnation of the police welled up and boiled forth like vervoius in action. A speech like that is almost foolproof. It can hardly fail. It was experience plus reflection. Vesuvius. What preparation really is? Does the preparation of a speech mean the getting together of some faultless phrases written down or memorized? No. Does it mean the assembly of a few casual thoughts that really convey very little to you personally? Not at all. It means the assembling of your thoughts, your ideas, your convictions, your urges. And you have all such thoughts, such urges. You have them every day of your working life. They even swarm through your dreams. Your whole existence has been filled with feelings and experiences. These things are lying deep in your subconscious mind, as thick as pebbles on the seashore. Preparation means thinking, brooding, recalling, selecting the ones that appeal to you most, polishing them, working them into a pattern, a mosaic of your own. That doesn't sound like such a difficult program, does it? It is not, just requires a little concentration and thinking to a purpose. How did Dwight L. Moody prepare those addresses of his which made spiritual history? I had no secret, he replied in answer to that question. When I choose a subject, I write the name of it on the outside of a large envelope. I have many such envelopes. If when I am reading I met a good thing on any subject I am to speak on, I slip it into the right envelope and let it lie there. I always carry a notebook, and if I hear anything in a sermon with that will throw light on the subject, I put it down and slip it into the envelope. Perhaps I let it lie there for a year or more. When I want a new sermon, I take everything that had been accumulating. Between what I find there and the results of my own study, I have material enough. Then all the time I am going over my sermons, talking out a little here, adding a little there. In that way, they never get old. The sage advice of Dean Brown of Yale. When the Yale Divinity School celebrated the 100th anniversary of its founding, the Dean Dr. Charles Reynolds Brown delivered a series of lectures on the art of preaching. These were published in book from under that name by the Macmillan Company, New York. Dr. Brown had been preparing addresses himself weekly for a third of a century and also training others to prepare and deliver. So he was in a position to dispense some sage advice on the subject, advice that will hold good regardless of whether the speaker is a man of the cloth preparing a discourse on the 91st Psalm, or a shoe manufacturer preparing a speech on labor unions. So I am taking the liberty of quoting Dr. Brown here. Brood over your text and your topic. Brood over them until they become mellow and responsive. You will hatch out of them a whole flock of promising ideas as you cause the tiny germs of life there contained to expand and develop. I will be all the better if that process can go on for a long time and not be postponed until Saturday forenoon when you are actually making your final preparation for next Sunday. If a minister can hold a certain truth in his mind for a month, for 6 months, perhaps for a year, it may be, before he preaches on it, he will find new ideas perpetually sprouting out of it until it shows an abundant growth. He may meditate he may meditate on it as he walks the streets or as he spends some hours on a train when his eyes are too tired to read. He may indeed brood upon it in the night time. It is better for the minister not to take his church or his sermon to bed with him habitually. A pulpit is a splendid thing to preach from, but it is not a good bedfellow. Yet for all that, I have sometimes gotten out of bed in the middle of the night to put down the thoughts which came to me, for fear I might forget them before morning. When you are actually engaged in assembling the material for a particular sermon, write down everything that comes to you bearing upon the text and topic. Write down what you saw in the text when you first chose it. Write down all the associated ideas which now occur to you. Put all these ideas of yours down in writing, just a few words enough to fix the idea, and keep your mind reaching the more all the time as if it were never to see another book as long as it lived. This is the way to train the mind in productiveness. You will by this method keep your own mental processes fresh, original, creative. Put down all of those ideas which you have brought to the birth yourself unaided. They are more precious for your mental unfolding than rubies and diamonds and much fine gold. Put them down, preferably on scraps of paper, bags of old letters, fragments of envelopes, waste paper, anything which comes to your mind, your hand. This is much better every way than to use nice long clean sheets of foolscap. It is not a mere matter of economy. You will find it easier to arrange and organize those loose bits when you come to set your material in order. Keep on putting down all the ideas which come to your mind, thinking hard all the while. You need not hurry this process. It is one of the most important mental transactions in which you will be privileged to engage. It is not it is this method which causes the mind to grow in real productive power. You will find that the sermons you enjoy preaching the most and the ones which actually accomplish the most good in the lives of your people will be those sermons which you take most largely out of your own interiors. They are bone of your bone, flesh of your flesh, the children of your own mental labor, the output of your own creative energy. The sermons which are garbled and compiled will always have a kind of second hand, warmed over flavor about them. The sermons which live and move and enter into the temple, walking and leaping and praising God. The sermons which enter into the hearts of men, causing them to mount up with wings like eagles and to walk in the way of duty and not faint. These real sermons are the ones which are actually born from the vital energies of the man who utters them. How Lincoln prepared his speeches. How did Lincoln prepare his speeches? Fortunately, we know the facts, and as you read here of this method, you will observe that Dean Brown in his lecture commended several of the procedures that Lincoln had employed 3 quarters of a century previously. One of Lincoln's most famous addresses was that in which he declared with prophetic vision, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." I believe this government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free. This speech was thought out as he went about his usual work, as he ate his meals, as he walked the street, as he sat in his barn milking his cow, as he made his daily trip to the butcher shop and grocery, an old grey shawl over his shoulders, his market basket over his arm, his little son at his side, chattering and questioning, growing peeved and jerking at the long bony fingers in a vain effort to make his father talk to him. But Lincoln stalked on, absorbed in his own reflections, thinking of his speech, apparently unconscious of the boy's existence. Thank you. That's it for the day.